Hello lovely people, it's Nicola back in the Stitches and Slapdashery sewing room. Hope you're all doing well. So today I'm sitting back at the sewing machine because I want to do a little bit more sewing. I feel like it's time for something a little fresh on the farmers market table on Sunday, and also there's been some requests for other things, and I'm now leaning more towards making things that keep people away from using plastic. One lady on Sunday asked me if I was selling bags to keep metal straws in. And whilst I've never ever seen the need for a metal straw because I never use straws for anything, I don't have a problem with trying to make bags for people's metal straws. So I had a little play last night, and it was a little bit of a struggle in places, I have to say. The thing is, I pulled out this canvas that I had, and it's quite thick. I'm not sure what the official weight is, maybe 10 ounce, but I have quite a lot of it, and it's just unbleached. Now, I kind of feel that if you're going for a more minimalistic lifestyle and you are wanting things that take the place of plastic, you might lean more towards natural colored fabrics, maybe. So last night I had quite the browse to see what people were making for metal straws or cutlery sets or other things, other zero waste ideas, you know, like bowl covers and all that sort of thing. And in the end, I did my own thing. Are you surprised? That's me. So what I ended up with was this thing here. It's a very skinny bag. I had to look around to see what size metal straws tend to be. And of course, some of them are angled rather than straight, so you need a little bit more space width-wise for those. So I ended up cutting fabric that was 12 3/8 of an inch long by 2 3/4 wide. I should give you the centimeters for that, shouldn't I? I'll figure out what the centimeters are for that, and I'll put it on the screen when I edit. Because, you know, even though 99% of the world is metric, I still tend to default to inches these days. And I made sure my label was on there, on the outside. You wouldn't see it if it was on the inside, because you can't see the inside at all, because it's so skinny. Turning it right side out was a pain, but I made it. And I'm going to make a couple more and take them on Sunday and see what happens. You never know. If you guys have got any favorite things that you use to avoid using single-use items, I'll be glad to hear it in the comments. A couple of things I dispensed with many, many years ago. Paper towels. Haven't bought paper towels probably in 20 years because I ended up just making a bunch of handmade dishcloths, mostly crocheted dishcloths, and I just use those for wiping up spills. They last for absolutely ages. So I don't use reusable dishcloths, and I don't use disposable dishcloths. And I also have little scrubbies that are crocheted out of tulle, so I don't buy sponges anymore. And yeah, I just use my dishcloths to wipe up messes. I made a while back, if you saw the vlog, a few vlogs ago, just for fun, I made one of those turtle mops, and it's recycled denim on the top and toweling on the bottom, and it looks like a turtle. I have actually used that a couple of times. Sometimes the kitchen floor gets wet and you go, oh, I don't want to be stepping in that. So a really quick way to deal with that is if you're in the middle of cooking or something, you just toss the turtle on the floor and sort of mop it up with your foot. and I really like it. I didn't think I'd use it, but I'm actually really liking having it. I've only needed to wash it once because it doesn't get used every day. So, you know, just toss it in the laundry when it needs it. The other thing I made a long time ago was cloth napkins just out of quilting cotton. And I didn't spend a lot of time with the hemming. Obviously, if you do a double hem, there's a lot less fraying and they look nicer for longer. And so we always use cloth napkins at the dining room table. And they have lasted, again, a really, really long time. It takes a really long time for them to wear out. You just toss them in the laundry, and I do not iron them. If you really were picky about how your napkins looked, you could iron them, fold them prettily. I don't. I just have a big bowl on my dining room table, and when they come out of the laundry, I toss them in. So it's just a crumpled mess, but it works. We rarely have people over for dinner. If friends come over, I'm just like, there's the napkins if you need one. Good enough, right? So what I'm going to do is make a couple more of these today, and I'll just show you how I did it. I've already cut my pieces. I've cut 4 pieces because I'm going to make 2 more of these. As I said, 12 3/8 long and 2 3/4 inches wide. That allows for a straw that's up to 10 inches long, because by the time you've folded and sewn, you lose a bit of length in the end there. And I did consider maybe using a little plastic toggle, to a cord stopper on the top here, but the ones I have are only wide enough for 1 strand of this cord. So I just did the double cord thing. And really, that does work fine, because when you cinch it, it stays cinched. There's not much to cinch, is there? But it works. I've also cut 4 cords, because you need 2 for each of these, that are 10 inches long. And I've left a little bit of tape around the ends of each one, because twisted cord tends to untwist when you don't want it to. So I only take that off once I have put the cord through the channels and knotted them. So once they're knotted like this, then I take off the sticky stuff. Where are my notes? This is the cord I'm using. I just wrapped it around here because I bought a whole ton of it. Just a cotton cord. Probably, why can I never find my little ruler? Here we go. So the diameter of this is maybe 3 millimeters. And 3 millimeters is about 1/8 of an inch. I also have my little trusty bodkin here for threading through the casing. It's a very short casing, but it would be kind of hard to do it without. You could always use a safety pin or a large-eyed needle, probably, just to thread it through and get it done. Now, I don't have a serger. One of the thingamies I saw, tutorials I saw online, very technical term, thingy, was to take your 2 pieces and serge around them first. I don't have a serger, but I do have a stitch on my machine that works pretty well. It's mode 2, number 9 on my Janome, what is it? 4120 QDC, can never remember that. So if you look at stitch number 909, it looks a little bit like a serging stitch in that it's a straight stitch on the left and then a zigzag on the right. So I'll run that around there just to make sure it minimizes the fraying, because this canvas likes to fray like crazy. Be back in a sec. I don't know if you can see this, but the stitching, it's cream thread on a natural background, so I don't know if you can see this. But You could probably use this stitch for seaming and overcasting at the same time, a bit like a serger, I suppose, because there's a straight line of stitching as well as the zigzag. But I'm still going to seam it. I'm doing this on each individual piece and then seaming it. But as you can see, this stuff does want to fray. Little strands keep wanting to come off. Feels like it uses a lot of thread as well. And don't you just love it when this happens? And you didn't notice it until you'd sewn about 12 further inches. And then you're like, why is there a strand of thread sticking out where there shouldn't be? All my edges are now neatened, and I've fused my label onto 2 of the pieces. In case you're interested what I use for my labels, they're not very fancy and they're quite economical. I use the stuff, fusible cotton fabric sheets. My local fabric store carries them, and you can also get them from Amazon. The brand is June Taylor. And all you need to do is go to some sort of label program, or probably a billion other options, and print out what you want, print it onto the labels lots of times, run it off onto one of these sheets through your printer, and then cut them up. That's what I do. It's very simple, and they just need a dry iron to apply them, and then I just stitch around them. For this little logo, I got the logo from Canva because I was making business cards and I found that little bag icon and I put that on my business cards. And so I got my IT guy, aka one of my sons, to set up the logo and the font I wanted as a sheet that I could just print off each time I wanted it, and then I just cut the pieces up when I'm ready to use them. I think they look fine. They could be fancier, but they work. So that's it sewn on. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a piece with a label and a piece without a label and put them right sides together. I don't think this canvas really has a right side and a wrong side. It looks the same both sides. And I'm going to make sure that this label here is at the bottom. So I'm not going to sew this top part together. Just going to clip it right sides together. Make sure this end is the one I want closed. Yep. And I'm going to make a mark from the top. Actually, 2 marks from the top. Because I need to allow for a turnover and also holes either side for a drawstring cord. So I'm going to grab my friction pen. That's another thing I love. Pilot friction pens. They are heat erasable gel pens. And I know a lot of people aren't too keen on using them for fabric because they can come back with cold once you've ironed them off. But in this case, it's going to be on the inside and no one will ever see it if it comes back, if they're outside in sub-zero temperatures. I'm going to make a mark 1 1/4 inches from the top, and then a second mark 3/4 of an inch below that. That's what I've done. This is 1 1/4 inches and this is 3/4 of an inch. Again, note to later Nicola for editing, add the centimeters in there. Now it occurs to me you probably don't need that upper line. When I originally made these, I was partly following some instructions that I had seen online where the person had sewn this top part, left a gap between those 2 lines, and then carried on sewing. And then when I had sewn it and realized how skinny it was, theirs was wider, so probably easier to turn. But they sewed it all the way to the top, except for that little bit for the channel. And when you turn it down and you've got to sew around the top, down here, no way. Wasn't going to happen, not with this skinny of a tube. So I unpicked that top part there and I just sewed from the 2-inch line, 2 inches from the top. I just sewed down, across and up and stopped there. And that way, this was just open. And I'll show you how that works out in a minute. The needle I'm using for this is a Microtex one. I'm not sure what size. Microtex are amazing. If you don't find Schmetz needles, which are Microtex, then look for something which is called a Sharp. Class A is called Sharp. I don't know about other brands, but Sharp needles are amazing. And don't rely on them staying sharp forever. Always change your needles out on a regular basis so that you're not struggling with a dull needle. You could also use a universal that's maybe an 80 if you're using canvas, or a denim needle, not a leather needle. Those are too sharp in cutting. Those have like a cutting blade on them. And for that straight stitching, I used a 2.4 length, just a little longer than the default, but not too long. And this is the fun part, she said sarcastically. This little tube here now, I need to turn right side out. The fabric's too thick to use my tube turner with it, so it's just basically a case of patience. I have some other ideas of what to make. Oh, I did find, okay, this is interesting. I did find some food safe waterproof fabric online the other day. One of the comments I got last Sunday at the farmer's market was, do you have any snack bags? And I said, no, that I can't source food safe bags, not food safe bags, food safe fabric locally. I can get PVC fabric or ripstop nylon, though that's not completely waterproof. So I had a quick look online and I found a place in Canada. They're out in Ontario called Funky Monkey. I have no idea what they're like because I've never ordered from them before. But they have something that's food safe and waterproof. And that would be awesome for snack bags because you could use it inside the bag. They could just be wiped clean. And instead of using Ziploc bags all the time, you could make some that are pretty on the outside and wipe clean on the inside. And reusable. Yes, I do reuse my Ziploc bags and wash them and use them and wash them and use them, but I know in theory you're not supposed to. When I did the food safe course a few months ago, they were quite clear on the fact that you're not supposed to reuse Ziploc bags in a commercial setting. And I can understand that because you don't know what food has been in there before. You could be contaminating one kind of food with another kind of food, and that would be ick or possibly dangerous if someone's got a nasty allergy. I feel like I'm repeating the pink fleece onesie tail problem. I think what I'm going to do, here's an idea. I think I'm going to make a few more of these that are wider so that if people have got a set of cutlery, reusable cutlery that they like to take in their lunch boxes, they can put them in one of these bags. What you really need for this job is a very large, very blunt knitting needle. I'm not sure what I've done with my large blunt knitting needles. This pokey tool isn't bad, it's just not really quite long enough. So let's see, while we're all waiting for this damn thing to actually turn out all the way, what's happened this week? After the last vlog, what happened? Oh yes, I had my Monday trip to Vancouver. Brenda and I got in her car, she drove, and we went all the way to Vancouver and back in a day. So we left. Oh man, I am not an early morning person. I don't know about you, but I am not an early morning person. I was up at 4 a.m. I hope you're proud of me, because I'm proud of me. And we left at 5. I was round at her house by 5 a.m. and we were on the road. And so because I wasn't going to eat before I went, I had food packed in my bag, and I had water, and I had my crochet. I made quite good progress on the Crochet Me shawl, and I made a few more squares out of the all-in-one granny square yarn, which I'll show you a bit later. Phew, onto the second one now. So driving early in the morning is lovely. The roads aren't too busy. We watched the sun rising over the mountains. It was lovely. We stopped in one of the towns along the way to get a coffee and have a pee and more gas, because yeah, I guess her car is a bit of a gas guzzler, because she ended up filling it there and also on the way back into town. And yeah, apart from sore butts, the trip went very well. We got there to her appointment on time. She had a doctor's appointment, and we got there on time. Just like it was well planned, because you never know with Vancouver traffic. As you're approaching Vancouver, there's always hold-ups. And you just never know. All it would take is for there to be a car accident or some other unforeseen thing, and suddenly you're stuck in traffic for 2 hours, say. But thankfully, we didn't have any more than the expected slowdowns, and she had a GPS on her phone, which led us straight there. We got there in good time for the appointment. She saw her doctor, and then we basically just headed back. I brought enough food for my breakfast and lunch and snacks, so we didn't need to stop for food. She didn't need food. And we just headed back out of town and stopped at the exact same coffee shop on the way back. It was kind of funny seeing the same people. Those guys work a long day, Starbucks. I'm really glad I showed you that sewing bag that I made last time, because I did actually sell it on Sunday. It was funny. I made that sort of drawstring bag with the handles out of that pretty vintage-looking upholstery fabric with the sewing theme. And I said, I better show you this straight away, because I might sell it on Sunday. Not really thinking that I actually would, but I did. And Sunday was the best day. The weather was good. It warmed up, but not too much. It was a little windy at times, and sometimes we were like hanging on to our tent legs, we vendors, to make sure that I think I might have said that when I did my little blurb at the end of the last vlog, which I recorded Sunday evening. I think you can see why I'm not going to make tons of these, right? It takes longer to turn it right side out than it did to sew it. Phew, done. That took ages. So I have pressed them. They're still looking a little creased. It's unavoidable. The whole process of turning them right side out makes them pretty creased. but I've pressed them, and I've also pressed the seam allowances at the top on that open part inwards. So all that's left to do now, apart from trimming that errant little thread there, is to fold the top of the flap down so that it meets where the join is. So where your top of your stitching is there, that's where you're folding that top bit. Ooh, croaky. And then all you have to do is sew across the bottom of that to hold it down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it in my machine like this, and I'm going to sew along close to this left-hand part, obviously opposite to the fold, as probably about 1/4 of an inch away from the bottom of that fabric. And I may move my needle over a bit, so it depends on how much space you've got here. Once it's under the foot, if it looks like it's going to be a little too far over to the right, you can move your needle over, or you can move your whole thing over so that it's not taking up too much of the channel for your cord, if you know what I mean. So with this seam, I made sure to back stitch the beginning and end, and then same with these. So there's a little seam right across there and right across there, and so it just creates 2 little channels for your drawstring to go in, and that's it. So I'll just do that with the other one, and then we'll put the cords in. Mr. Stitches is getting his own mileage in today. Well, yesterday and today. So it was kind of funny because after I had done, what was it, 750 kilometers or whatever it was on Monday, he's done about the equivalent in the opposite direction yesterday and today for work. He'll be back soon. All right, so I love this bodkin. It's so simple. You don't need to hunt around for a safety pin, but it holds it like that. So you just thread it in. I think this is the shortest ever drawstring channel I have sewn. And then, so all the way around and out one side, and then I can knot it and cut it. Really, you don't need a lot of excess cord hanging off the edges. Just got to have enough that it's not cinched permanently, and there's something to grab. And then the other side. The nice thing about having that bit of tape there is that it gives the bodkin something to grab as well. Sometimes you feel like you're shredding the end of these things if they're not anchored down. So this one just goes all the way through both channels, but the opposite way of the first cord, so that it's sticking out on the opposite side. Couldn't be easier, right? So yeah, I think what I might do, because this one was made 2 inches wide plus seam allowances, so 2 3/4, because I always use my 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. I love a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. I've said it before. You can just line up the edge of your fabric with the edge of your presser foot, the right hand edge of your presser foot. You don't even have to think about it. So that one was cut 2 3/4 inches and worked out about 2 inch finished. And I am croaky today. And there we are. 3 are finished. Again, I'm not going to make a lot of them in case they do not sell, just because one person asks for them doesn't mean I'm going to get a lot of demand. I have multiples made of things that I've made ever since I started planning for this farmers market season back in January. I've been sewing like crazy, and some items I made a lot of, and I'm wishing I'd only maybe made 3 maximum of each one, because some things just aren't selling. That's not to say they won't later in the year, I guess. This overcasting stitch really does take a lot of thread. I'm having to fill my bobbin a second time for this project. So what I like to do sometimes is I've got my main thread, on the top of my machine, which is feeding my needle, and I keep a second one on the detachable top spool so that I don't have to unthread my machine. Are you straight? I don't know if you're straight. So I can get my bobbin filled without having to unthread my needle. It saves a tiny amount of time. I decided against the 4-inch for now. I'm just going to try one that finishes up at 3 inches instead. So I cut these at 3 3/4 by 12 3/8, and I'm going to see how they look. And I feel like that will probably be big enough for a reusable knife, fork and spoon set, something like that. I think Mr. Stitches has a cutlery set that he can test out in this when he gets home later. The second 3 are done. Here are my originals, and here are the second 3. I decided to go for the 3-inch wide. I think if someone has cutlery, these are going to be a little bit long, but if they have cutlery and straw kit, which I do believe exists, then it'll hold everything. And I think with the straw kits, you also get little tiny skinny brushes to clean out the inside of the straws. So those should fit as well, I think. So I'm going to stop there with that idea and think about something else I could make before Sunday. I popped upstairs to get the crochet shawl because I wanted to just show you what it looks like so far. Hang on. All right, so this is how far I got. It's quite long because you're doing so many increases on your way from the top down. But that's good because it's a good length to... Oh, I won't do it because I'll make the microphone hiss at you. But you can wrap it around your neck from the front and cross it over and bring the tails forward, and it's good length for that. I had to guess how many rows to do before I stopped for the pom-pom trim. So I've done 22 rows altogether. This is a design by Crochet with Clare, and it's at least, I think, 6 years ago that she brought out the video for this, and I've made 2 before. This is my 3rd. It's a very, very easy pattern. Once you've done the first few rows, you know what you're doing. And when you decide that you're almost at the point where you want to add the edging, you just do 2 more rows without increasing. So I weighed this, and let me see if I can remember what it was. This, I think, weighed 96 grams, and what's left weighs 48 grams. So that works perfectly. I've basically used 2/3 of my Lion Brand mandala cake so far, and I've got 1/3 of it left for the pom-pom trim. I'm never going to use that much for the trim, but I just live in fear of running out partway through and having to rip back. So I have allowed myself plenty of yarn for the pom-pom trim, I think. And I will get that done later on. My next yarny job should be just grafting the end of that tube scarf that I was talking about last time. So I think I'm going to finish up here for now. I'm going to go graft that scarf, and then I can start on the pom-pom trim. I know it's going to take a while, but it's so pretty. It really makes all the difference to this scarf, or shawl, depending on what you want to call it. I did have to cut another section out, or not another section, but I did cut a section out. Back here, just before that greeny yellowy colour started, I had a knot. And I thought, okay, well, I'll roll with it and I'll retie it. I never leave a knot as is. So I cut it out and I tied a magic knot. I've never had a problem with a magic knot coming undone, so I think we're okay. I can't find where that yellowy section started. But it was quite a hard transition because usually with the mandala, there's at least a few inches where one colour segues into the next. So I left that one in, but at this point where the turquoise came to an end, there was a knot and then there was a brown section, and I thought, I've already had a brown section in this. So I cut the brown out and I just re-tied on the next part, which was a dark grey. And then the next colours are a darker blue and more of the turquoise. So I think that's fine. I'm going to have a blue bobbles. I'm happy with blue bobbles. So next time you see that, it will be finished. Well, it's not exactly bright and early, but I haven't even had any coffee or tea yet. So I am going to pour myself a cup of coffee. Do you like my French press cover that I made about a year ago? Appropriate fabric. friend of mine gave me that piece of fabric, and it works really perfectly for this because it's even got a coffee pot on it. Here we go. I've already got my soy milk and my maple syrup in there. You know, I'm not a huge coffee drinker, but sometimes I see memes that sound rather appropriate. Like, the world is so unfair, it makes you make coffee before you've had your coffee. Usually I have black Yorkshire tea, not black. When I say black tea, I mean it's black tea, but I have milk in it. So usually I have caffeinated tea in the mornings, but every now and again I just feel like having a coffee. And I had a bit of a headache when I woke up this morning, and I'm thinking, oh, okay, water and caffeine, that should fix it. Yep, pretty good. That's an organic one we got from a place called OM Foods, Organic Matters. It's in, is it British Columbia? Yeah, they used to be in Nelson, and I think they moved to the coast, but yeah, they sell a lot of healthy bulk foods. The shipping is pretty pricey, so the best thing to do is buy lots so you get free shipping. Okay, while I'm waking up, I just wanted to finish up showing you the 2 projects that I finished last night. Mr. Stitch's scarf. Last week, last vlog, you will have seen this on the needles. This end was on the needles. I had a heck of a time with this last night. There's still a little blip in it where I made a mistake, but I was grafting along, and I wasn't trying to use a specific technique. I was just grafting away, and it was looking lovely till I got about 3/4 of the way along. And then I got distracted. I was watching one of Crochet Luna's vlogs. Don't know if you know Claudia, Crochet Luna. She recently commented on my little vlog, and I was so honoured. Claudia, if you're watching, thank you. And then when I looked back and I carried on, I started to get a purl bump along the top. So obviously I was doing something wrong, and I didn't know what I was doing wrong. And I think, you know, when I wasn't thinking about it, it was fine. And when I was thinking about it, it wasn't fine. In the end, I had to go back and I had to look up Kitchener stitch again, just to get the old purlwise, knitwise, knitwise, purlwise thing going again. And I did still get a funny little blip along here in the middle, but Mr. Stitches isn't going to care, and no one else is going to notice. So that is completely done. It's not very long. It's only about 40 inches long, but that's how long he likes his scarves. So we can put that one aside. I don't know if you're on Ravelry, but I absolutely love logging my projects on Ravelry. I don't know if you do that too, but I love setting up a project page, putting all the information in, logging the progress, putting down when it's finished and putting the photos in. It's so satisfying. And one of the most satisfying parts, of course, is converting it from a WIP to an FO. Right, the Me Shawl. I also finished this last night. I could have gone back downstairs and done more sewing in the evening after our walk, but I decided to stay upstairs and sit on the couch and spend the time with Mr. Stitches, seeing as he'd been out of town the night before. But I did get a little custom order from one of my kids for one of those cutlery drawstring bags, the 3-inch wide one. And I said, well, you can't have that one, but I'll make you another one. Because he has a cutlery set, and obviously it fits in there really well. But I digress, as usual. The scarf, the big reveal of the pom-pom trim. Ta-da! and more. Ta-da! As you can see, it's completely worth spending the time doing the pom-pom trim. The main needle, not needle, Nicola, you know better than using the word needle with a crochet project. The main hook was a 6mm. And then the pattern says to go to a smaller hook for the pom-pom, so I used a 3.75. And you do 4 little chains, and then you create this little pom-pom, and then 4 chains and join into the next gap. It's really easy. It's something that does take a little bit of time, but as I said, completely worth it, because it really sets off the final product really nicely. Another FO. So that only leaves me with 2. All I have left on the Ravelry project page now is the festoon shawl, which is the sock yarn crochet shawl, which I'm once again trying to ignore, and the 10-stitch twist knitted baby blanket, which I could probably focus on next and make an effort to get that as a finished object as well. That would be awesome. I just realized when looking at my gallery in my phone that I got a few bits of footage from the drive on Monday. So if they're usable, I'll pop them in and you'll have seen them just before this little bit here. I think we're probably at the end of this vlog. In Canada, it's Canada Day on July 1st, which is Monday, so it's a long weekend here. We have a couple of things planned for the weekend, but mostly it involves avoiding the crowds. We're not party people. There's another of those memes that goes around, isn't there, that says, I like to party, by which I mean stay home and crochet. That's me, really. But actually, we have a friend coming for dinner tomorrow, and we're going out for a potluck on Monday, and Sunday have the market. So that's the weekend. So I'll say goodbye for now. Thanks so much for watching and being here once again. Oh, and before I forget, Anvita, if you haven't replied to my request to email me about your mailing address yet, I did announce that you were the winner of the giveaway last time, and I haven't heard from you. I haven't actually checked all my messages this morning because I'm doing this first before I even go in and look at my emails and my Facebook and my Ravelry and all that stuff. But if you haven't already emailed me, stitchesandslapdashery@gmail.com, then please do so I can send you your goodies. Thanks for watching and bye for now.